I used to rent a room in a big, creaky old house just outside the city. It was cheap because the landlord barely maintained it. Peeling paint, drafty windows, pipes that screamed whenever someone showered. But the worst part, the part that still makes my skin crawl to remember, was the basement. It wasn't finished, just stone walls, dirt floor, exposed beams, and a single dangling bulb that buzzed when you pulled the chain. The washer and dryer were down there, so I had to go in at least a few times a week. Every time I felt like something was watching me from the shadows. I told myself it was just the vibe. Old basements are always creepy, right? But I swear this one was different. The first time I realized something was wrong, I was doing laundry late at night, around midnight. I'd thrown clothes in earlier but forgot to move them to the dryer. So I went down before bed. As I pushed the door open, I froze. The basement light was already on. I hadn't left it on. I figured maybe one of my housemates had gone down, so I called out, "Hello?" No answer. I went down anyway, trying to ignore the chill crawling up my arms. The bulb swung slightly like someone had just walked past it. The washer lid was open. All my wet clothes had been pulled out and piled on the floor. I stood there in the buzzing half-light, my throat dry, staring at the pile. None of my housemates would do that. They barely acknowledged me, let alone touched my stuff. I stuffed the clothes back in the dryer, turned it on, and bolted upstairs, locking my door. I barely slept, telling myself it was a prank or maybe one of them was drunk. But then it kept happening. Every time I left clothes in the washer or dryer overnight, they'd be moved. Sometimes stacked neatly, sometimes spread out across the floor. Once I found a pair of jeans hanging from a ceiling pipe like someone had draped them there on purpose. I asked my housemates about it. They all swore it wasn't them. In fact, one of the girls said the same thing had happened to her towels the week before. That's when I started avoiding the basement. I'd wait until daytime, until I heard people moving around upstairs just to do laundry. But even then, weird things kept happening. Once I heard a faint humming down there when nobody was supposed to be home. Not the machines. A low, tuneless hum, like someone singing to themselves in the dark. Another time I went down and found small, wet footprints on the dirt floor. Bare feet, leading from the washer into the far corner where the light didn't reach. I stopped doing laundry at night altogether, but then one evening, everything escalated. It was a Friday around 11:30 p.m. I was lying in bed with headphones in, scrolling my phone, when I felt this sudden pressure, like the air in the room had gotten heavier. I pulled my headphones out. That's when I heard it. The basement door creaked open, every hair on my body stood on end. Nobody else was supposed to be home. I knew because all my housemates had gone out earlier. I heard their cars leave. I crept into the hallway. Sure enough, the door to the basement stood wide open. The faint yellow bulb glowed at the bottom of the stairs. I wanted to run, but my stupid curiosity won out. I whispered, "Hello?" And I swear on my life I heard someone whisper back. Not clearly, not words, just a faint hiss of sound like breath caught in a throat. That's when the light flickered and went out. The entire basement dropped into blackness. I slammed the door shut and ran back to my room, locking it, heart hammering so hard I thought it would burst. I sat there, wide awake, staring at my door for hours. Around 3 a.m., just when I thought maybe I'd imagined it, I heard footsteps, slow, barefoot, coming up the basement stairs. The doorknob rattled, not my bedroom door. The basement door, then silence. I barely slept. The next morning when I went to check, the basement door was closed again. Like nothing had happened. For days after, nothing unusual occurred. I started to convince myself it was exhaustion, paranoia, whatever. Until the last night I ever stayed in that house, it was raining. Hard. Thunder shook the windows and the power flickered all evening. By midnight, everyone else was gone for the weekend and I was alone. I tried to sleep, but around 2 a.m., I woke up to the sound of water dripping, except it wasn't from outside, it was inside. Drip, 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 coming from the hallway. I got up slowly, dread curling in my stomach. I cracked open my door. There was a wet trail on the floor, like someone had walked through puddles barefoot. The prints glistened in the lightning flashes, and they led straight from the basement door. My breath caught in my throat. The door was open again. A faint glow pulsed from below like the bulb was struggling to stay lit. I should have left. I should have grabbed my keys and run. But something pulled me forward down the hallway, toward those stairs. Each step I took, the smell hit me harder, damp, moldy, like soil after rain. At the top of the stairs, I froze. In the dim light at the very bottom, something stood. Not a housemate, not a person. It was too tall, its limbs too long, its head bent at an impossible angle to fit under the low ceiling. Its skin looked slick, almost wet, glistening like the footprints, and it was staring up at me. Its mouth opened slowly, stretching far wider than it should. That same low humming poured out, vibrating through the floorboards. I stumbled back, slamming the door shut, my hands shaking so violently I could barely turn the lock. The humming stopped instantly, but then knock, knock, knock. 3 slow knocks on the other side of the door. I didn't sleep. I didn't move. I sat in my room with the lights on until morning. Then I packed everything I owned in a single bag and left. I didn't even wait for my deposit back. It's been years, but I still dream about it. The humming, the smell of wet earth, the way it tilted its head to watch me like it had been waiting. Sometimes, when I wake up in the middle of the night, I swear I hear it again, that faint sound, drip, 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 and I wonder if leaving that house was enough or if it followed me. I used to love long drives at night. Empty roads, music up, windows cracked, cool air blowing through. I don't anymore. Not since that night 2 years ago when I came so close to disappearing. I was driving home from visiting my sister. She lived 3 states away, and I had stretched my visit too long. I had work Monday morning and about 11 hours of driving ahead of me. I left around 6 p.m., figuring I'd push through the night with coffee and gas station snacks. For the first few hours, it was fine. Just highway headlights and endless black fields stretching out on both sides. Around midnight, the traffic thinned to nothing. I'd go 10-15 minutes without seeing another car. That's when I noticed headlights behind me. At first, I was relieved. I hadn't seen anyone in so long. The glow of another car almost felt comforting. But as it got closer, I realized something strange. It wasn't speeding up to pass me. It stayed right behind me, too close. I frowned, checking my mirrors. Old car, maybe a rusty sedan. Its lights flickered like the bulbs were old. I tapped my brakes lightly, hoping they'd back off. Instead, they inched closer, tailgating me. I cursed under my breath. Maybe they were drunk or just some asshole trying to mess with me. I moved into the right lane, figuring they'd pass. But when I slowed down, they slowed too. 5 minutes passed like that, then 10. Just me, alone on an empty highway with this car glued to my bumper. Finally, I decided to test them. I dropped from 70 mph to 40, almost dangerously slow for the highway. The car slowed with me. That's when the knot in my stomach tightened. I floored it, pushing back up to 80, 90. My little Honda rattled, but I didn't care. The headlights shrank for a moment, but then they grew again. The car was speeding up too, keeping pace. By then I knew this wasn't random. Whoever was behind me wanted me scared. And it was working. My gas light flicked on around 1:30 a.m. I had maybe 40 miles left. I checked my GPS. There was a rest stop 20 minutes ahead. Bathrooms, vending machines, maybe a night guard. If I could just make it there. For those 20 minutes, I didn't take my eyes off the mirror. The car stayed locked behind me, never passing, never backing off. When I finally pulled off the exit and into the rest stop, my heart was hammering. It was completely deserted, just a row of vending machines under flickering lights and 2 bathroom buildings. No other cars. No trucks except the one behind me. The red sedan pulled in and parked directly beside me, though there were dozens of empty spots. My hands shook as I turned my car off, pretending to scroll my phone while sneaking a glance. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out. Tall, broad, maybe mid-40s. His face was shadowed, but I caught red, tired eyes glinting under the light. He didn't move at first, just leaned against his car, staring at me. I locked my doors, pulse thundering in my ears, then he smiled. Not a friendly smile. Not even a smirk. Just this stretched, unnatural grin that made my stomach twist. He took a step closer. Then another. I fumbled for the ignition, starting my car. His expression changed instantly, like a switch flipped. The smile dropped into a dead, hollow stare. He lifted his arm and pointed at me. Not waving. Not signaling. Just pointing. I slammed the gear shift into reverse and shot out of the lot. Gravel crunching under my tires. Back on the highway, I pushed past 90 mph, praying I'd lose him. But in my mirror, headlights appeared again. He was following me. Every move I made, every lane change, every attempt to speed away, he copied. He never tried to pass, never fell behind, just stayed right there, for miles. By then, my hands were slick with sweat. My chest ached from how hard my heart was pounding. I thought about calling the cops, but what would I even say? A guy's following me? They'd tell me to pull over, but pulling over felt like the last thing I should do. Then I saw it. An emergency U-turn lane. One of those spots for highway patrol. I didn't think. I didn't plan. I just yanked the wheel and cut across. My tires screamed as I shot into the lane, spun, and flew onto the opposite side of the highway. For one terrible second, I thought he'd follow. His headlights swerved like he was considering it. But then, they stopped. In my rear view, I saw him slam his brakes. He sat there on the shoulder, watching me as I sped away, and then he turned and disappeared in the other direction. I drove another hour before stopping at a gas station, where I sat shaking in the lot, trying not to throw up. I barely slept that night in the driver's seat, too scared he'd somehow find me again. I thought that was the end of it, just some deranged stranger trying to mess with me. But 3 days later, after I finally made it home, I saw a news article that made my stomach drop. A woman had gone missing off that same highway. They found her car abandoned on the shoulder. Witnesses reported seeing an old red sedan driving erratically around her before she disappeared. She was never found. I still wonder why he gave up on me. Why he let me go. Did he think I wasn't worth it? Did he know I'd go to the police? Or maybe he just liked dragging it out, seeing how long he could scare me. Sometimes I wake up at night and think about that smile. The way he pointed at me like I was already his, and I realize I wasn't lucky. I was just next in line. I don't think I've ever told this story out loud before. Writing it down almost makes me feel like I'm reliving it. But if I don't, I'm going to keep waking up at 3 a.m. in a sweat, remembering the sound of his footsteps outside my door. It happened when I was 19, renting a small one-bedroom apartment on the edge of town. It wasn't much, just a cheap place near campus with thin walls and a long, dim hallway that connected my front door to the kitchen and living room. My bedroom was at the very back next to a tiny bathroom. I thought living alone would be exciting, freeing even. But the first night I realized how oppressive silence can be. No roommates, no family in the next room, no dog scratching at the door. Just me, the hum of the fridge, and the creaks of an old building settling in the night. It started on a Thursday. I came home from work around 9:30, tired, hungry, and ready to crash. I threw some leftovers in the microwave, scrolled my phone on the couch, and mindlessly shoveled food into my mouth. At some point, I must have dozed off because I woke up to darkness. The TV was still glowing faintly, but the clock read 2:14 a.m. That's when I heard it, a soft thump from the hallway. At first, I told myself it was the neighbors. The walls were thin, and I'd heard them arguing before. But this sound wasn't muffled. It wasn't through the walls. It was inside my apartment. I froze on the couch, straining to hear. For a few seconds, there was nothing. Then, thump, thump, slow, deliberate footsteps moving closer down the hallway. I sat up, my heart already hammering in my chest. I hadn't locked my door when I came in. I remembered it vividly. I'd had my hands full and figured, it's fine. This building's quiet. My first thought was someone broke in. I grabbed the nearest thing I could find, a heavy glass candle holder, and held it like a weapon. My apartment was dark except for the TV light flickering. The footsteps were getting closer, dragging slightly, like whoever it was wasn't in a rush. I wanted to scream, to shout something like, "Get out!" but my throat felt like it had closed up. Instead, I crouched low by the couch, gripping the candle holder so tightly my knuckles hurt. The steps stopped. Right outside the living room, I could see the faint outline of the hallway from where I crouched. My TV light just barely reached far enough to cast shadows on the wall. I didn't breathe, didn't blink, and then slowly a shape leaned forward into the dim light. A man, his head tilted to the side like he was studying the room. I couldn't make out details, just the shape of a tall figure, broad shoulders, and what looked like a coat hanging from him. He didn't move closer. He just stood there. I don't know how long I stared. It could have been seconds, could have been minutes. My eyes watered from not blinking, but I didn't dare look away. Then, as quietly as he'd come, he stepped back. His shadow melted into the hallway. The sound of footsteps started again, this time moving away toward my front door. I swallowed hard, my brain screaming at me to do something. I forced myself up, candle holder still in hand, and bolted for the hallway light switch. The bulb flickered on with a buzz. The hallway was empty. The front door was closed. My chest heaved as I stumbled toward it. My hands shook as I reached for the deadbolt. That's when I noticed something that made my stomach twist into knots. The lock was still latched from the inside. Whoever I'd just seen hadn't come through that door. I slammed it shut anyway, double-checked the chain, and grabbed my phone with trembling hands. I called the cops, whispering frantically into the receiver that there was someone in my apartment. They told me to stay on the line until officers arrived, but the whole time I was on the phone, I kept staring at the end of that hallway. At the shadow my eyes swore was still there. When the cops showed up 15 minutes later, they searched the entire apartment. Every closet, every cabinet, even under the bed, nothing. No signs of forced entry. No footprints. No man in a coat. They left me with a warning. Make sure you keep your doors locked at all times. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I sat on the couch with every light in the apartment on, candle holder still clutched in my lap, waiting for dawn. I wish that was the end of it. The next night, I triple-checked the locks, closed the windows, and even wedged a chair under the doorknob like you see in movies. I told myself it had to have been a dream or a hallucination, maybe sleep paralysis while I was half awake. But around 3 a.m., I woke up again, this time to the sound of breathing. Not mine, not a neighbor's through the wall. Heavy, raspy breathing just outside my bedroom door. I sat up slowly, my entire body ice cold. The sound was unmistakable. Someone was standing there, inhaling and exhaling like each breath hurt. My phone was on the nightstand. I reached for it as quietly as I could, dialing 911 again with shaking hands. But before I could hit call, the breathing stopped. Silence. I sat frozen, staring at the crack under my door, half expecting to see shadows move across it. Then, all at once, something slammed against the door. Hard. I screamed. The wood rattled, the cheap lock barely holding. Another slam, harder this time, and I swear the door frame splintered. I hit call, begging the dispatcher to send someone now. They told me to stay in the room, not to open the door, that officers were on the way. But after the third slam, everything went silent again. By the time the cops arrived, the door looked untouched. No cracks, no splinters, no marks. They searched again. Found nothing again. I felt insane, like I was losing my grip on reality. But I know what I heard. I know what I saw. For the rest of that week, I didn't sleep at home. I crashed at a friend's place, telling them my apartment had plumbing issues. When I finally forced myself to go back, everything was quiet. Too quiet, until the last night I ever stayed there. I was packing boxes to move out when I found something tucked behind the bathroom mirror. A small piece of folded paper. On it, in messy handwriting, were the words, "You look so peaceful when you sleep." No signature. No explanation. Just that. I left that night and never looked back. It's been years, but I still check every hallway before bed. Every creak, every shadow, every sound in the dark, it all takes me back. And sometimes, when I'm half asleep, I swear I hear it again. That slow, dragging thump, thump, thump coming down the hallway.